All right, guys, so we got a test coming up on chapter 13. This is where we solved quadratic equations. Now, there's three things we did to solve quadratics. The first one is we solved by quadratics, we solved by factoring. This is where we factored it using the swing method or greatest common factor. Once we did that, we set each term equal to 0 and we solved. So just number one real quick, if we're solving by factoring, it's already been factored for us. So all you have to do is set each of those factors equal to 0. Then we would solve, like on the first one. I could subtract 3 from both sides. That leaves me 5x equals negative 3. Then to solve for x, I divide both sides by 5. And I get one of my answers is negative 3 over 5. You can do the other one. You're going to subtract 1 divided by 7. You will get your second answer. Be careful when you do those, because again, if they're not factored to start off with, then it's not going to work out for you. Let's go ahead and we're going to skip over number 2. You'd have to do the swing method, which means you'd have to find the sum and the product, which it looks like the sum would be 5, the product would be negative 24. Then you'd have to get your factors, but eventually you'll have what we had over here. You set them both equal to 0 and solve. Number 3, you might want to try GCF first. Once you take the GCF, I think you'll be good. Now, I would like to do number 4. Remember, when we're doing these, we have to factor. It has to be in the form ax squared plus bx plus c. So I'm going to add 3y to both sides and subtract 35. I'm going to do it all in one step. Plus 3y squared minus 35. So now I have that's just 3y, not 3y squared, sorry. So now I have 2y squared plus 3y minus 35 equals 0. Now, we're going to have to use our swing method here to factor it. So let's see, I need my sum, and I need my product. Remember, your sum's what's in front of the y, which is 3. Your product is a times c. 2 times negative 35 is negative 70. Now, once you get here, remember you have to start listing out the factors. 1 and 70 obviously is not going to work. 2 and 35 won't work. You can go down the list. 5 and 14 won't work. Then we come to 7 and 10. 7 and 10 look like they're an option, but one of them has to be negative. If I make negative 7 plus 10 would give me the 3. So now I can open up my parentheses. I'm going to have a y minus 7 times y plus 10 equals 0. But now we have to check that a value, and I know that a is 2, so I have to divide both of my terms by 2 and simplify. 7 over 2 is simplified, so I swing the 2 up front and get 2y minus 7. On the other one, 10 divided by 2 is 5, so get y plus 5, and that equals 0. Now, guys, we're right back where we were in number 1. Set them both equal to 0 and solve. So 2y minus 7 equals 0, and y plus 5 equals 0. Now, you can finish it from there. That's just 2 steps on one, and one of them is just 1 step. All right, guys, so that'll help you out there. Remember, solving by factoring, you have to factor it before you can solve. Let's go ahead and go to the next one. Now, as we're doing these next few, we may need to pause here and there. I want you guys to be working your calculator, so if you don't have a calculator, make sure you get up and get one now. This one, the directions, totally messing up there. Solve each of the following using the quadratic formula. This is the second way that we did things. Now, you will have a formula sheet with the quadratic formula on it. You need to look at it when we're using it. Now, remember, these, like the last ones, they have to be in the ax squared plus bx plus c form. This one is already in that form. So I need to list my a, b, and c. So I'm going to pause for just a second. I want you to list out your a, b, c. And what I need you to do then is go ahead and fill out this template. Look at the formula. If you don't have it in front of you, it's on the board. And go ahead and fill that out. Let's pause for just a second. All right, guys, so once you have it in the right form, which it already was, we're going to pull our a out as 2, negative 7 is b, negative 1 is c. Now I just need to plug those in. The first one is negative times b, which is negative 7. plus or minus the square root of negative 7 squared minus 4 times a, which is 2, times c, which is negative 1. And all of that is divided by 2 times a, which is 2 times 2. So make sure you do that. This isn't a multiple choice test, so if you do that, I'm giving you a lot of points already. That equals negative times negative 7 gives me positive 7, and that's all going to be divided by 4. I need you guys to put in your calculator what's under the square root. I want to pause for just a second so that you can find that. Make sure you're putting it in your calculator. Now, when I put this one in my calculator, I got that 57 is what the answer was. Now, when we get to this point, we need to check two things. Is it a perfect square? If it is, we need to go ahead and take the square root of it. If it's not, we can pretty much jump into our calculators. So I can take the square root of 57. It gives me a decimal, so that means it's not going to work as far as getting actual whole numbers. So I'm going to have to go ahead and put this in my calculator. You could have 7 plus the square root of 57 divided by 4, or 7 minus the square root of 57 divided by 4. Now, if you don't like doing that and you're not comfortable, what I would say is it does say round to the nearest tenth, but this right here is technically the absolute correct answer. There's no rounding involved. If you get to this point and you leave it like that, then I'm fine with it. But if it's a perfect square, you have to keep going. Now, if you were going to put these in your calculator, you'd put in the numerator, hit enter, then divide by 4. You'd get 3.6 on one of them and negative 0.1 on the other. So however you leave it is fine with me. If I were you, I would leave it like this, though. If you can do nothing else, just leave it like that. Now, I also want to talk about number 6. Number 6, it's not in the right form. It's not ax squared plus bx plus c. It looks like our ax squared is over here. So I'm going to add x squared to both sides. So now I have x squared plus 2x plus 7 equals 0. So I want you to go ahead and fill out your a, b, and c and fill out the equation. While you're doing that, I'll write this out. Now remember, on the test, I won't be there to write out the template. You've got to look at the formula. Oops. So we might pause for just a second. Don't take too long because we do have to get through with the video. Now if I fill out my a, b, and c this time, I have x squared, so that's a 1. I have 2x, so that's a 2. And I have 7, so I have a 7 at the end. So I fill these out. Again, the first one is my b value, which in this case was 2. Then I have b squared minus 4 times ac, which are 1 and 7, over 2 times a, which is 1. So guys, we should be able to put this in our calculator now. Negative times 2 is negative 2. I know that's divided by 2. You need to put in your calculator everything under the square root. Open parentheses 2, close parentheses squared, minus 4 times 1 in parentheses times 7 in parentheses. If you do that, you should get negative 24. Now this negative is very important to us because once we see it, that means we're done. That means we have no real solutions. So guys, be careful. If you solve one that says quadratic by factoring, I'll take off points. If you solve one by factoring that says quadratic, I'll take off points. Just watch out for the things that I just showed you, and it should be all right. Let's go to number 7. Now, number 7 is essentially the same thing. We need to use our quadratic formula. Sorry, we're not going to do number 7, I'm sorry. But in number 7, you will get a perfect square when you do the numbers underneath the square root. It is in the right order, so you can get your a, b, and c pretty easy. Number 8 is one I wanted to talk about. I have negative 2x squared equals 4x minus 3. Not in the format I want, so I'm going to move my 2x squared to the other side by adding it. So now I have 0 equals 2x squared plus 4x minus 3. Now, we've done a couple of these already, so I'm just going to go through this one quick. My a, b, and c are 2, 4, and negative 3. And now I'm going to fill out my equation. So stay with me, okay? When I fill it out, I have x equals negative times my b value of 4 plus or minus the square root of my b value squared, 4 squared, minus 4 times my a value, which is 2, times my c value, which is negative 3, And all that's divided by 2 times a, which is 2. So if you need to pause for a second to catch up. Now, in the next part, I'm going to have negative times 4, so negative 4 plus or minus. Now, I need you guys to put this stuff under the square root in your calculator. Well, I guess you don't have to in this one. I'll just tell you what it is. It's 40, and all that's divided by 2 times a, which is 4. Now, this is not a perfect square, but it is an even number, and you might think we could simplify. Now, I'm not going to kill you much if you don't simplify correctly, but I think this one is a good one to simplify. So I'm going to come over here and take my square root of 40, and I need to divide it by perfect squares. The first one would be 4. Well, it would be 4 times 10 would work. So I'm changing the square root of 40 to the square root of 4 times 10, which is the same as the square root of 4 times the square root of 10, which is 2 times the square root of 10. So I can replace the square root of 40, with 2 square roots of 10. So now I have negative 4 plus or minus 2 square roots of 10 over 4. Now, if you have trouble with that, do your best. If you're trying, I'm going to give you almost all the points if that's the only thing you have trouble with. If you just go straight to your calculator on that, I'm going to take off points. Now, we can also simplify these 3 numbers. I can take a 2 out of each of them. So my actual answer will be negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2, plus or minus 2 square roots of 10 divided by 2 would leave me the square root of 10, over 4 divided by 2 is 2. So guys, if you can get it to this step, you're going to be okay. If you can get it to that step, you're going to be much better, okay? So if you have troubles with that, just be careful, do your best. I'm not going to kill you on that question, okay? Let's go on to the next one. Now, these are what we were doing on Monday, or yesterday, I guess. It's completing the squares. And remember, our big thing is we can find that missing c value by taking the b value, dividing it by 2, and squaring it. So we're going to do just a couple of them. Like number 9. On number 9, our b is 8. So if I plug it into that formula, I get 8 over 2 squared, which is equal to 4 squared, which is equal to 16. So I can plug in my 16. Now, you can do the rest. You have your b's negative 20, 16, 7, and negative 13. I would like to talk about number 7. It's going to give you a decimal when you do your b over 2. Then when you square it, you're going to get a decimal answer also. That's okay. Don't worry about that one. It'll also happen here because 13 is also going to give you a decimal when you divide it by 2. All right, guys, let's go on to the next problems. This one is our third way, and this is what we did yesterday. This is our completing the square. Now, you're going to have to be careful on the test. I'm pretty sure they're in some order, but make sure you read the directions. So we're going to complete the square real quick. We're going to look at the first one. X squared minus 14x plus 16 equals 0. Remember, this one, unlike the other ones, we need our number, our constant, over on the other side. This isn't set up that way, so I'm going to subtract 16 from both sides to make it that way. So I have x squared minus 14x, I'm going to leave some space, equals negative 16. Now normally we'd have to divide by a, but in our case a is 1, so dividing wouldn't matter. So we go back to our b over a squared, or b over 2 squared. In our case in this one, our b is negative 14. So I have negative 14 over 2 squared, which is, negative 7 squared, which is 49. So I'm going to plug 49 into my little hole over here like we did on the last one, so plus 49. But I can't just add 49 to one side. I have to do it to both. Now this is where we can factor and write it in here. Remember, the variable goes first, and it's plus. Actually, guys, we didn't do one like this, but it's okay. If it's plus, it's always going to be plus. But this one has a negative. We didn't see that yesterday. If it has a negative, it's going to be minus. But remember, the number right out to the side is our b divided by 2, which would actually give us negative 7, which makes sense why it would be negative. So when I factor it, I don't think that happens on your test, but it'll be all right. That equals negative 16 plus 49, which is a 33. So do your best to get there, guys. Once you do, though, it's not hard after that. I'm going to take the square root of both sides, so I have to solve. I get x minus 7 equals, remember it's plus or minus the square root of the number. Since this one isn't a perfect square, I'm going to leave it like that. Then I'm going to add 7 to both sides to solve for x. Again, my answer is x equals 7 plus or minus the square root of 33. Or you could have written this, plus or minus the square root of 33 plus 7. Okay, so not too bad. Be careful when you do the steps. Make sure and divide by a if you have to. I just want to real quick look at number 15. It's already in the right order, but your b is a 7, so when you get your number you're going to add both sides, it will be a decimal, so don't let that bother you. Number 16, let me go down to that one. Number 16 is already set up in the right form. This one, again, you won't get a perfect square, so just leave the answer with the square roots. I'm going to stop this video there, guys. I've got a few more on the other one to do. If you have any questions, I will be here Wednesday morning, so you need to come and ask. So good luck.